Could you imagine a storm where there is 130-mile-per-hour winds, 27 trillion gallons of rain, an estimated 75 billion in damages, and 39 deaths? This isn't a made-up storm or from a movie. This was Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey was an unnatural disaster that was plagued with people not helping their most vulnerable. Today we'll be talking about why Hurricane Harvey was an unnatural disaster, the different vulnerabilities people faced, and how these vulnerabilities changed their experience in the disaster. So why was this storm caused? Hurricane Harvey was partially caused by climate change. Climate change is causing warming of waters, and warming of waters is one of the reasons why hurricanes start, and warming of waters causes more evaporation. With more evaporation, this causes more precipitation, and more precipitation equals more flooding. And flooding was one of the main reasons why this disaster was so terrible. This is why I believe that this disaster is not completely natural, because climate change is caused by humans. So now that we've talked about why this storm was caused, let's talk about the different vulnerabilities people experienced. For example, the disabled, poor, and immigrants, and people in the more southern areas were more vulnerable and were not able to evacuate as easily as some of the other people. For example, there are places called colonias. Colonias are towns that are located on the U.S.-Mexico border that are poor, rural, are prone to flooding, and lack wastewater infrastructure, according to Tiani Misra of the Atlantic. Immigrants were especially vulnerable to this disaster because the U.S. Border Patrol wouldn't stop their checkpoints, so they couldn't evacuate without the risk of being deported. So now that we've talked about the different vulnerabilities, let's talk about how it changed the experience of people in this disaster. For example, people in more southern areas had a longer way to go than people in northern areas to be able to evacuate. And also, a lot of people in the southern areas are poor, which in turn makes it harder to evacuate. And even the people that could evacuate, the government didn't want them to. The mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner, stated, "You can't put in the city of Houston 24 million people on the road," according to Tiani Misra of the Atlantic. So since he didn't want everybody to evacuate, the whole Texan National Guard was sent out for rescue and to help, and also many civilians offered up their help. And while there was a lot of people helping, people in the poor and very rural areas were the last to receive help, and received less amount of people helping compared to the more inner cities. So now that we have talked the different vulnerabilities that were experienced, and why Hurricane Harvey was a natural disaster, this is what we can learn from it. Hurricane Harvey was an unnatural disaster that was made worse due to people and the government not helping their most vulnerable. With this deadly and terrible disaster, there is a lot that we can learn from it and a lot that we can improve to hopefully have less disastrous and less deadly hurricanes in the future. Thank you.